Most Americans believe the president should listen to the military advice that generals give. But a bedrock principle of American politics is civilian control of the military. What happens when those two beliefs come into conflict? I'm Jim Lindsay, and this is Lessons Learned. Our topic today is President Harry Truman's announcement on April 11, 1951, that he had dismissed General Douglas MacArthur as commanding general of U.S. forces in Korea. Douglas MacArthur was an American hero. The son of a U.S. Army general, he graduated first in his class from West Point, fought with great distinction in World War I, and became Chief of Staff of the Army in the 1930s. After a brief retirement, he returned to lead the U.S. Army in the Pacific during World War II. When Japanese forces pushed U.S. troops out of the Philippines in 1942, he famously vowed, "I shall return," and he did. MacArthur was awarded a Medal of Honor for the Philippines campaign, and he became one of only 5 Americans to ever hold the rank of 5-star general. He accepted Japan's formal surrender on board the USS Missouri in September 1945, and for the next 5 years he ran the U.S. occupation of Japan. MacArthur's military career did not end with World War II. When North Korea attacked South Korea in June 1950, Truman tapped MacArthur to command U.S. forces sent to repel the invasion. He responded brilliantly. In September 1950, he ordered one of the most daring and successful military operations of all time, the amphibious assault at Incheon. The operation cut North Korean forces in half and turned the tide of the war, at least for a while. MacArthur pressed his military advantage, pushing across the 38th parallel into North Korean territory. But as U.S. forces drove toward the Yalu River and the border with China, the unthinkable happened. Some 300,000 Chinese troops came to North Korea's defense. The war's entire military and political calculus suddenly changed. Unwilling to risk a wider war with China, and perhaps with its ally the Soviet Union, President Truman refused to order attacks on targets in China. Truman's decision to limit the fighting infuriated MacArthur. He wanted to take the war to China. Despite being told to keep his views to himself, MacArthur wrote a letter in late March 1951 to the Republican Speaker of the House criticizing the limited war strategy. Truman wrote in his diary, "This looks like the last straw, rank insubordination. I've come to the conclusion that our big general in the Far East must be recalled." On April 11, 1951, Truman announced with deep regret that he had relieved MacArthur of command.
A number of events have made it evident that General MacArthur did not agree with that policy. I have therefore considered it essential to relieve General MacArthur so that there would be no doubt or confusion as to the real purpose and aim of our policy. It was with the deepest personal regret that I found myself compelled to take this action. General MacArthur is one of our greatest military commanders, but the cause of world peace is much more important than any individual.
It was a risky move for the president. His public approval rating was just 26%. The man he had just fired was a national hero. Within a week of his firing, MacArthur returned to the United States. Some 30 million Americans watched on TV as he gave a rousing address to a joint session of Congress. Lawmakers responded with thunderous applause when MacArthur declared, "In war there can be no substitute for victory."
I now close my military career and just fade away, an old soldier who tried to do his duty as God gave him the light to see that duty. Goodbye.
MacArthur then went to New York City, which gave him the largest ticker tape parade in history. There were no parades for Truman. Hotheads called for his impeachment. He was hanged in effigy in several cities. And in a major breach of manners for the 1950s, he was publicly booed. Truman had one thing on his side, though. Most Americans, and most U.S. generals, opposed the military strategy that MacArthur favored. They wanted nothing to do with a war with China, not when America's main foe was the Soviet Union. As General Omar Bradley told the Senate during hearings prompted by the dismissal of his fellow 5-star general, in the opinion of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, MacArthur's strategy would involve us in the wrong war, at the wrong place, at the wrong time and with the wrong enemy. What is the lesson of Truman's dismissal of MacArthur? Just this: presidents can be justified in overruling the military advice of even their most decorated generals. MacArthur's desire to take the war to China, though well-intentioned and certainly heartfelt, failed to consider America's broader interests, the public's appetite for war, and the merits of other strategies. But those are precisely the factors that weighed most heavily on Truman's mind. Today, the United States is again at war. How long U.S. troops should stay in Afghanistan and what they should do while they are there matters of dispute. The U.S. military will recommend steps that the White House should take next. The President may accept those recommendations, revise them, or reject them entirely. That is the meaning of the principle of civilian control of the military, and it's what the framers intended when they made the President Commander-in-Chief. So here's a question to consider. How much deference should presidents give to the military? And under what conditions should they overrule military advice? I encourage you to weigh in with your answers on my blog, The Water's Edge. You can find it at cfr.org. I'm Jim Lindsay. Thank you for watching this installment of Lessons Learned.
Production 65013, scene 1319, take one.
All right. Do you think that the action you took in removing General MacArthur will have any effect on the MacArthurs of another time?
It will have an effect on the military until, if we should accidentally get into another war, and we'll have the same experience, whoever's present, because you'll have a general in that layout that will have the same disposition and the same way to work, and you'll be using MacArthur as an example. Up until that time, we won't have any trouble.
Well, do you think that he will, the general will be using MacArthur as an example, or will he be afraid to do what MacArthur did?
Now, you never can tell. You'll have to wait and see what kind of a general we've got and what he's trying to do. But you can be sure that if we have another emergency, if we should have another emergency and war should come, you'll find some general, or it doesn't have to be confined to the general, you'll find some general of the Army or general of the Air Force or some admiral of the Navy who think he's bigger than the president. They always do that, and you can't help it. It's happened in every war.
You don't think that he will be frightened by the fact that once a President Truman fired a General MacArthur?
No, he wasn't frightened by what Lincoln did to his four generals.
Very good. Now, if you had the MacArthur incident to do over again, what would you have done differently?
Beg pardon?
What would you have done differently if this whole thing started all over again? What actual damage did General MacArthur's conduct caused the nation to suffer? I think that General MacArthur's conduct harmed us in Korea.
I'm not sure about that. I haven't given that enough thought to tell you, but whatever it did, it didn't keep us from doing what we had to do in Korea.
You think it stretched out the war any?
It may have. I can't say anything as to that at all because I'm not in a position to tell you. I don't know. But I know that it didn't help any in Korea. You can be sure of that.
We were in the midst of a war, and of course a nation needs solidarity in time of war. When this thing happened, do you think this hurt us at the home front? Did you plan to repair your relations with MacArthur by offering him another major assignment at that time?
No, I did not. I was through with him.
Could you tell us what your plan was?
I didn't have any plan. All I wanted to do was to get rid of him and the trouble he was causing me, and I did that, and that's all there was to it.
There's a difference between, you say you never fired him. You think that his ambition was really tied in with his burning desire to be president. Did you regard, or do you regard MacArthur as outdated or outmoded for these modern times, his kind of thinking?
No. No, I do not. The handling of a program of that sort, unless the military approach radically changes, it's necessary to have men in charge of these things in the field, and it's necessary to have chiefs of staff who understand what it's all about, who can advise the president on the military situation as it develops. We're talking now as to a case of an emergency, which I hope will never come.
how do you think he handled his Japanese administration? Did he fall behind the times? Was he modern in thinking in that sense?
No, no. He handled his position as the protocol called for, and his position as the commanding general in charge of the troops to see that Japan implemented the treaty that they had signed.
You think he did? Would you describe what kind of a job you think was a good job actually in Japan?
Yes, he did a good job in Japan.
Now, just something that happened once, did we not have to replace some of his key civilian advisors to revise and curtail some dangerous economic policies being effective in Japan?
Yes, we did. A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction to supplement the growing power of our armed forces. In their present form, these bombs are now in production, and even more powerful forms are in development. It is an atomic bomb. It is a harnessing of the basic power of the universe. The force from which the sun draws his power has been loosed against those who brought war to the Far East. We are now prepared to destroy more rapidly and completely every productive enterprise the Japanese have in any city. We shall destroy their docks, their factories, and their communications. Let there be no mistake. We shall completely destroy Japan's power to make war. It was to spare the Japanese people from utter destruction that the ultimatum of July the 26th was issued at Potsdam. Their leaders promptly rejected that ultimatum. If they do not now accept our terms, they may expect a rain of ruin from the air, the like of which has never been seen on this earth. Behind this air attack will follow sea and land forces in such numbers and power as they have not yet seen, and with the fighting skill of which they are already well aware. We have spent more than $2 billion on the greatest scientific gamble in history, and we have won. But the greatest marvel is not the size of the enterprise, its secrecy, or its cost, but the achievement of scientific brains in making it work. And hardly less marvelous has been the capacity of industry to design and of labor to operate the machines and methods to do things never done before. Both science and industry work together under the direction of the United States Army, which achieved a unique success in an amazingly short time. It is doubtful if such another combination could be got together in the world. What has been done is the greatest achievement of organized science in history.